one of the other, probably one of the biggest parts that I wanted to talk about as far as this chapter goes is the mention of the Watchers, for one. When Haliax initially jumps in, Cinder's torment and Kvothe, and Haliax jumps in like, yo, fucking cool it. And he's like, you're no better than a Watcher. And so Watchers, one, it's not capitalized, so it's not a group. It doesn't sound like it's a group. But he says, like, you're no better than a Watcher. Sounds like he might be talking about, like, the Angels. Like, of all the groups that I've heard in the book, the only one that sounds like Watchers is the Angels. I mean, that's almost exactly the Scarpy's second story when he talks about Aleph offered Scarpy, offered Celatos and Telu and all these groups, they could become angels. And the reason Celatos turned him down was because he was like, I want to go get my fucking revenge. I want to stop the Chandrian. And he was like, no, if you become an angel, then you have to sit back. You can't judge past deeds. You can only judge what you see happen from here on out. And so that sounds like a watcher, like someone who is sitting on the sidelines and watching and judging. And so when he says, like, you're no better than a watcher, it sounds like he's talking about the angels. And it sounds like he's kind of got like a disgust for these people because they're just sitting on the sidelines. They're not like actively playing a part. And that's it sounds like who I think that it most sounds like. Go ahead.
Well, it sounds like that could also be who gets involved here, who prevents Cinder. Like, obviously, Cinder could be also have antagonism towards them because they're stopping his show, right? Yeah. It seems like that would be who gets in the way. At least that's what I'm kind of connecting there. Unless there's another different version of Watchers. We haven't heard of anything other than angels. And I haven't heard of a dark angel.
And it would make sense too if it is the angels that showed up, because one, they just committed a horrific deed, so the angels would be showing up to judge, but they're able to kind of just like fucking skirt out of the situation, get the fuck away. And if the angels are just kind of judging things as they go about, and they're not hunting down criminals like the Amyr, who seem to be on a mission to stop the Chandrian. Like, it doesn't seem like seems like nothing's stopping the Amyr. They're always on fucking mission. They have one single mission, and it is to stop the Chandrian, to get to fucking end them. Whereas the angels seem to just kind of have a more, we're going to judge things as they happen. So, if you're like a Cinder type of character, it would make sense that you would look at these guys like they're a fucking annoyance. Like, they always fucking show up when we do our shit, and we got to fucking run away from them, but they're not hunting us down.
Yeah, that's what's interesting, though. I wonder what power they wield then. If they show up, what happens?
The fact that, like, Haliax says, who do I keep? Who do I keep you safe from? The Singers, the Scythe, the Amyr. He doesn't say the angels. So, like, when Haliax mentions the Watchers as almost like an annoyance, like they're annoying, makes me think that the angels might be that annoyance factor rather than like someone that's like actively hunting them down, like the Amyr or the Scythe or the Singers.
So, then why would they need to flee? Do the angels bring?
Because, just because you think, they're annoying, you got to run away from them when they show up, doesn't mean that they're not powerful. It's Telu.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder what that looks like. We don't know. I guess,
it definitely seemed like when whoever that was showed up.
Yeah, they didn't fuck around.
No, they got the hell out of there. But it's important to note that Kvothe said that he felt watched. So maybe they are the Watchers. I don't know how to correlate it other than that. But he does right after that call him or say that whoever was coming was watching.
Also, the other thing that makes me think it was probably the angels that were showing up is because the angels are described as like, otherworldly. They're not like just walking around like humans. They've been burned out of existence. They're on a different plane. Like Telu's like, I will join you and I will leave this world. And so it seems
more
like
evidence
that they
of
are
the multiverse, though.
Yeah, yeah. And but it seems like they are like outside of this world, so it would make more sense like that Kvothe would feel their presence without seeing them, whereas they see them, they look up and they see them, and they're like they come, but Kvothe, he doesn't see them, he just feels a presence, and so it would make sense that would be the angels, whereas like the Amyr, you would think it's fucking dudes running on a battlefield, running up, and you would just fucking see them. It would make more sense if it's the angels were the watchers and the angels were the ones that showed up. That would make more sense to make the story consistently fit better.
It's also kind of interesting that this is probably, at least in my mind, this is probably the biggest leap in the books for readers. Like you have to like, I mean, you're kind of, Rothfuss is kind of testing the willingness of the reader to just buy in. You know what I'm saying? Because it is so like, what's there? What is it? Who is it? It's
not
based on faith, sort of, like.
Not only that, like, after they show up, Haliax is like, come to me, and then they drift off like fucking sand.
Yeah, exactly. It's very like,
it's fantastic.
It's very fantastic. Yeah, it's the most fantastical, mystical thing that happens in the books. It is the biggest test of our, again, like our willingness to defy our own, I don't know.
But he earns it he earns it like because in the chapters preceding this, he painstakingly starts to explain sympathy to you. He starts to explain magic to you. So then you get a little fucking taste of fantastical magic, and he's earned it.
So yeah, I want to throw something out to you guys. Could it be that most people don't see the Chandrian, and because Kvothe is in his sleeping mind by the time he gets to the fire, that possibly that's why he can see the Chandrian, and by the time he is on the road, the King's Road, and comes across Cinder again, at that point he's advanced enough to where he can access his sleeping mind and see. My question is it possible?
Yeah, no, I got what you're saying, but no, I don't think that's the case because, tying it into what happens in the woods with the bandits and Cinder, like definitely no, because Dan and Hespa and Martin and Tempe all see Cinder.
Yeah.
So that's definitely not sleeping mind shit. But also, like, there's no shock that he sees them. There's no like, holy shit, this kid's fucking got some major fucking power if he can fucking see us.
Yeah,
that would be like they would make a bigger deal. Like if they weren't supposed to be seen, they would make a bigger deal that he can see them.
Well,
and they don't at all.
Some of the main hints are the way Cinder looks and the way Haliax looks. So that also would be problematic, because that's what we can tie into how we know it's the Chandrian. It's visual. I mean, largely it's visual elements.
Well, so what Fitz was saying was like that the average human in Kvothe's shoes walking up would not see them. But Kvothe is because he's behind, his sleeping mind is accessed. The only reason he's able to see him is because his sleeping mind. And I'm saying that wouldn't make sense because if they're not normally seen by the average Joe in that kind of situation when they drop down and kill everybody, if the average person can't see them in that, and they're getting fucking slaughtered and they don't see who's slaughtering them, well, then when Kvothe walks up and sees them, they would have made a fucking point of that. That would have been, they wouldn't have been having a conversation with them. It would have been like, how the fuck do you see us? No one can see us.
Yeah, I get that. I think
they were so nonchalant about it that it can't be that the average person. The average person has to be able to see him. Plus, the stories of the Chandrian and all their signs and all the fucking trauma they do.
That's what I was saying.
It wouldn't like spread out through time if no one could see them. It would be like there's these fucking horrific events where fucking people just like get fucking torn apart. We don't know what happened. No one's there.
Yeah.
Like he was just standing there, and then his body just split apart.
Yeah.
Like I don't get it.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I mean, because literally their visual images are the signs. So yeah, there's some
jerks. They're jerks.
They're big. Yeah, they're big jerks, man. These guys has problems.
So, can I throw out my theory right now?
Yeah,
it'll be my first theory. I haven't had one yet.
Right.
Besides Kvothe maybe being an anti-hero, but this plain-faced Lackleth guy, I think he may be a bigger character than they lead on to. Like I think after everything we've talked about, where with the four doors of sleep, but in our discussions, how Abinthy, the mysteries of his character, and also Chronicler, maybe being part of the Amyr, or is it the Adem? No, it's the Amyr, right?
Yeah.
So maybe this plain-faced Lackleth guy is obviously, well, not obviously, but a part of the Lackless family and the Lanray and Kvothe's mom's family, and possibly this is maybe his like great uncle Lackless, who is coming to teach him just what he needs to know right now so that he can survive for later on.
It seems interesting. It's interesting you mentioned that, because this time reading through, I did feel like he's being delivered information. And it's very important that it's mentioned that he didn't know these things. He hadn't learned them before. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've had dreams before where I'm capable of doing things, or I do things or know things that I don't know. You know what I mean? So I've had that feeling before, but this is much more, it's very, very practical, right? I mean, it's very detailed. It's very specific to specific herbs and types of berries he can eat at certain times you can't. What this is going to do,
how to find water.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of practical information, which there's a blur there, because I feel like when I first read it, I felt like Lackleth was someone that he knew at some time when he was with the troop.
That's right. He said
so they had an experience, and I thought this was part of the experience that he had. But so we don't know how much was in reality and how much is unreality, and it's being delivered through his dream. But I get
he says, go ahead.
The two parts that he says that he had never learned were, he was never taught sailor's knots from Ben, and my father never finished his song. The part with Lackleth is memories. That's things that happened that he was taught as a kid. And yes, I also think that Lackleth could very likely be a Lackless, like a part of that family, a broken line of that family. But yeah, I don't think that dream is just a dream. I think that someone was feeding him the information he would need to survive. I think when someone came and scared the Chandrian away and he felt like someone was watching him, I think those same people that saved him from the Chandrian also fed him the information that he needed to survive, but not only fed him information he needed to survive, but also gave him hints of things he would need to know in the future that would be important. Because I think that when they talk about the Greystones, he says, so then Ben was no longer there, and there was not one standing stone, but many, more than I had ever seen in one place before. They formed a double circle around me. One stone was set across the top of two others, forming a huge arc with thick shadow underneath. I reached out to touch it. this is similar to the description in Faerinial, possibly the Doors of Stone. In Faerinial, it's described as, there's a place not many folk have seen, a strange place called Faerinial. If you believe the stories, there are two things that make Faerinial unique. First, it is where all roads in the world meet. Second, it is not a place any man has ever found by searching. It is not a place you travel to. It is a place you pass through while on your way to somewhere else. So he walked and then later on he walked through the center of Faerinial, and as he did, he saw a circle of great Greystones. I think the circle of great Greystones in that story of Skiop that Kvothe tells Will and Sim about the bum traveling through Faerinial and comes across the different groups. I think that circle of Greystones and the one he dreams about is the same. And if that's the case, he's never seen that. And it's highly likely someone was putting that into his mind for information, embedding a memory into his mind for later.
So this also kind of plays into, I don't know if it's a direct theory, but something we've talked about before, where his bloodline seems to be, his particular bloodline seems to be a nexus of Lackless, Rue. There's some Fae in there, right?
I don't know if Fae, but I mean, if he's
connected through the story.
Yeah, if he's a descendant of Iax, then Iax is the one that created the Fae. I think the Fae, I think you got the two groups. The people that went into the Fae, I think they became Fae creatures through the years, through kind of like an evolution process. So I don't know if they started as Fae. I don't think that's the case. But regardless, yeah. So he's got some lineage to the guy that created the Fae, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. So because that again ties into, it ties into a lot of things. It ties into this, the possible use of Kvothe to accomplish tasks that they're looking to have accomplished. So they're progressing him along. Somebody's looking out for him, or it's almost like he's fitting that fateful plan that we've sort of talked towards a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely interesting. I wanted to mention something though about the doors that I noticed on this read through that didn't jump out at me as much before. When they mentioned the door of death, the final resort, nothing can hurt us after we are dead, or so we have been told. I didn't notice that, or so we have been told before. Is there something more I should be reading into that? Because it just feels like...
Well, Haliax can't escape behind that door.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So I think that's what it brings my mind towards, is that Haliax can't die. So there is no escape for him.
Well, so I guess maybe what that makes me question, is that capable for others? Is he the only one? Can someone else fit into a wedge that, can that happen to Kvothe?
I think it could happen to... if it could happen once, I think it could happen again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think it could happen again. Also, though, going on talking about like the two parts of that, the couple parts of that dream where it wasn't information that he had before. Like, obviously the Lackleth stuff is learning how to survive. But then you also have about Ben with the knots. What I think is kind of cool about it says, knots are an interesting thing, Ben said as he worked. The knot will either be the strongest or the weakest part of the rope. It depends entirely on how well one makes the binding. Because they talk about binding, and binding is tied up in magic so much, it makes me think of the written magic that Denna talks about. How she was when she was learning how magic works from Kvothe and Will and Sim in the bar, and she asked them, have you guys ever heard of a written magic where you write something down and it makes it come true?
Like runes, right?
Not like runes. Like I took they were like, no, it sounds like fairy tale magic. It sounds like something that doesn't exist. They not like a sigildry, something different, like just writing, I want to be happy,
like a spell.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, but like a written spell. And you see her throughout the stories, she's tying, knots in her hair, and she's always, it's a consistent theme where she's tying knots in her hair. And then at one point, Kvothe sees the knot in her hair and he goes, beautiful, because he reads it. It's a Yillish knot, and it's spelled, the knot she tied spelled beautiful. And then when she gets embarrassed and takes it out, and he is like, I liked it, how it was better. And she's like, yeah, that's kind of the point. And you're supposed to see it and think beautiful is basically what she's implying. So, but she does this throughout the books. And that was just the one time where he realized the knots she's tying in her hair spell something. And so I think she might discover a written form of magic. And I think Ben is describing maybe Yillish knots and a written form of magic in that part. And so maybe the Yillish knots are going to play a bigger role. I think there's a reason why he's learning how to read Yillish knots. I think that they're going to play a bigger role. Might be something to do with the Doors of Stone. And it could be that this part here is kind of implanting that seed for written magic into his mind, similar as imprinting the seed of the Greystones is preparing him for future events.
So this could be about this could also be about the Lackleth box, right?
Yeah, that's what I would think it would have to do with, is how to open the Lackleth box. I think there's some kind of written, like Yillish knots, a written form of magic on there that you have to be able to read to be able to open it.
Well, I mean that does tie into naming, right? I mean, it's written, but names mean something, right? Words mean something. Certain names to certain things unlock certain things.
Yeah.
So it's just a different form, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely, I think it's a type of magic. I think that's what Ben is describing. I don't think it's sailor's knots. I think it's written form of magic in the form of knots, in the form of Yillish knots.
Huh. That's really interesting. Yeah, it's funny because this last read through, I noticed the binding thing, but I didn't make that deeper of a connection. But it's, again, one of these things that, Fitz talked about before, and I think we all experience it, especially on our first read through. We're like, I think there's something more here. I'm going to continue. Maybe I'll come back to it, But I remember I had that feeling on this one where it's like, oh, binding. Because, I mean, it's so great because it's also, he's telling us in the subject matter of the book, words mean something. Words mean something. Everything he puts in this book means something. There's no throwaways, right? So we've said that a number of times.
Yeah, and I'll bring it up like when we come across, when Denna comes into the story and he notices the knots, I'll make sure to bring it up because it happens a lot, and it's only I think one time.
I remember her doing the knots in her hair that smells beautiful, but really I didn't notice it, or at least hold it and remember that she does it often. So I'll be interested as that comes up.
Yeah, and even right after that, she goes, and when he discovers that and she gets embarrassed, then he's trying to ask her about it and stuff, and she ties into her hair, "Stop talking," or "Don't talk to me," and then he immediately shut up. So I think, and now you could interpret it one of two ways, because he goes like, he's like, well, even I could read that sign. But it could be that it was a magical thing and he stopped talking because she wrote that in her hair. But in his mind, he thinks he stops because he was reading a sign. But it could have been it could also been magic. So it's another one of those scenes where it could be, it could be two different, seen two different ways. Which happens a lot. There's so many parts in this book that you can interpret so many different ways.
That's really cool though, because that gives us another layer of sympathy, right? Or if you want to call it magic, it's another layer to how it can be used, or how it's used in different ways. There's like that interconnectedness that he weaves throughout how Rothfuss creates this sympathetic bindings, how the magic, how it works in these varieties of different ways. And it does seem to come back to naming or words. So if the knot she's tying in her hair actually says something, they tie into a word, then that's what it all falls back to, right? That's what the sigildry is. That's what all of it is, right?
Yeah. It's obviously it's a different type of magic. I mean, it's similar to sigildry, but still even different. It's not in sigildry that you type, you spell out, "Don't talk to me," and then you put that on, some iron piece of metal. It's not the same. It's different, but it is written like sigildry. It's more like a cousin to sigildry, is what it seems like.
I remember the way that I felt about when I first read about sigildry and how the runes are utilized. It felt like mathematics. It felt like you build a formula with particular words, and if you leave one thing out, it dramatically changes everything.
Yeah.
You include one other thing in, then it can work a completely different way.
Yeah, it kind of seems like calculus with the different the different signs and symbols, and the different formula you got to go by, to make everything work. But you got to know what the different symbols and words mean, and how to interpret them, put them together. So it seems like a type of formula that you got to put together, like in mathematics for sigildry. But the Yillish knots thing does not seem like that at all. It just seems like you just straightforward write what you want to happen, and then it happens. If that's actually what's going on.
Is there anywhere else that's brought up besides with her?
I don't think so. Not off the top of my head, I can't remember a spot where they talk about written magic. It's only that she mentions it, and the knots she ties in her hair and that kind of stuff. And then also, like, he feels that box, the lackless box. He can feel what to him feels like Yillish knots in that box that is just super worn away. So those are really like the only parts I can think of off the top of my head where that kind of stuff is discussed. The big thing I wanted to mention, which I think solidifies who the Watchers were, who I think this is who gave him the dream, and I think this is what makes it clear is who gave him the dream, that when he was in the woods, that gave him the vision of the circle of Greystones and the necessary stuff to survive, and Ben teach him the knots. It talks about, "I closed my eyes. I remember the deep silence of the deserted street around me. I was too numb and tired to be properly afraid. In my delirium, I imagined death in the form of a great bird with wings of fire and shadow. It hovered above, watching patiently, waiting for me." Now, that fits neatly with one of Scarpy's second story. Neatly.
Oh, you said fits neatly.
Yeah, fits neatly with Scarpy's second story.
I do?
When he talks...
Oh, God.
Never mind.
Yeah. With Alepht's angels. So, like, Aleph, and the second story Scarpy tells, he says, "Then Aleph spoke their long names, and they were wreathed in a white fire. The fire danced along their wings, and they became swift. The fire flickered in their eyes, and they saw into the deepest hearts of men. The fire filled their mouths and sang songs of power. Then the fire settled on their foreheads like silver stars, and they became at once righteous and wise and terrible to behold. Then the fire consumed them, and they were gone forever from mortal sight. None but the most powerful can see them, and only then, with great difficulty and at great peril, they mete out justice to the world, and Telu is the greatest of them all." I think the fire danced along their wings, it became swift. It fits neatly with, "In my delirium, I imagined death in the form of a great bird with wings of fire and shadow." I think an angel saved him when he's laying there dying, because like the guy dressed as Canis, he's like, "I told you there was a kid buried here." So clearly he wasn't easily seen. And I think that this fiery bird that saved him, I think he was seeing an angel, and an angel sent Incanus, the guy dressed as Incanus, to save him.
Garrett, right? I think his name was Garrett.
Yeah.
Garrick. I thought it was... I was just going to mention one detail that I thought that has always stuck with me is the soothing warmth that he felt as he was dying. Because he's freezing to death. Well, he's also beat to shit. So he's probably got internal bleeding. He's got all kinds of problems. But I always thought that was really, really interesting that there's a soothing warmth that he's feeling. And then he sees those visuals and everything.
Yeah, it was clearly he was dying. He was going to lay there and die.
Yeah.
And then he has a vision that resembles an angel comes and saves him.
Hey, Dan, where's that, the description of the angels? Where's that at again?
You said it was Scarpy's
That's
second?
the second story Scarpy tells.
Okay, so coming up anyway.
Yeah.
Wait.
But
the second story Scarpy tells, that's in book 1?
Yeah, it's right after. It's like the next chapter. It's like it might be the second chapter after he tells the first story. They're right after.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
He comes in and like Scarpy's already in the middle of it.
Yeah, that's right.
A little late.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I forgot those details. I thought that was okay.
I mean, to me, that's a very clear description of an angel saving.
Yeah. This was one of those other situations where as I read through it, I'm like, there's got to be something more to that visual image. The fire, the bird, the shadow. I'm like, there's got to be something more to that. It can't just be, he did research of, near-death experiences and that's what people see because you don't typically hear that, But again, I didn't make the connection. But, from what you just described, that seems to be a pretty clear connection. Yeah.
And that makes me think that it's the angels that put the dream in his mind that the angels are looking out for him.
So that's
like in his two most desperate hours when he's stuck in the woods and he's by himself, like he gets a vision of what he needs to survive. And then when he's laying there in his most desperate need, then an angel comes to save him. And like, what that one kid says in Chapter 20, when he's talking about Telu, he's like, do not call on Telu saving the greatest need, for Telu judges every thought and deed. Like they talk about Telu coming in your greatest need. And if laying down in the street, beat to shit, ready to die in a snowdrift, if that's not your greatest need, I don't know what else would be.
Yeah, I mean, he'd even accepted that he was going to die. He was accepting it as comfort. Is it too much of a leap to say that the angels represent or are a representation of the Amyr?
No, they're different. The angels were the ones that accepted Aelif's offer. The Celotos turned down Aelif's offer to become an angel and started the Amyr. Because Aelif said, if you become an angel, you can't judge past actions, and you can't, just be on a mission to stop the Chandrian. You're only able to judge the things that you actually see in front of you from here on out. You can't go judging past. And he's like, no, that's not good for me. He's like, I want revenge, and I want to stop them from doing what they're doing. So some joined Celotos and became the Amyr, and some joined Aelif and became angels. And then another group of the Ruark went a different route.
We need to hurry up and get to other chapters because anybody else who's in my shoes right now is chomping at the bit, waiting for these other Scarpy stories to play out again because there's so much that I did not even comprehend. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And we're getting real close to getting to them. We'll probably get to them next week, but and I'll go into further detail on those. I'll flesh them out a little bit more when we're actually discussing them. But as far as this stuff goes, that's as much as you would need to know. But I do think that the angels saved him in this spot, and that leads me to believe that the angels are, they have something in mind for Kvothe. At least they think he's special, that they're protecting him.
Yeah, this goes. Go ahead, sorry. I was going to say, it goes back to that, what I've been talking about, or what I've been trying to talk about, which is that the fatefulness, this plan, this overarching plan to pull Kvothe in a certain direction, or to make sure that he at least survives and can get to this place, that he serves this role, this purpose.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, Tim. I was just going to bring it back to what we just read earlier when he went into his dream state and started to learn all this different stuff. That also could have been. I can't put it all together, and I don't think any of us can without speculating. But someone being a guide for him and nudging him in a certain way and giving him information or just flat out help at certain times when he needs it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seems clear that someone's looking out for him. Just on these last couple chapters on seeing, his two most desperate situations. He has a dream. He just happens to have a dream that he remembers everything he's going to need to survive. And then when he's laying on the street dying, just happens that some dude finds him, not only finds him, gives him a silver talent, and literally saves his life.
Yeah.
Or how about when they kill his family and then something comes and scares away the Chandrian right before they try to kill him.
Yeah.
Someone's protecting him, and so someone's got to seize him for a bigger purpose. I think it's pretty fucking clear that that's what's going on.
Yeah, it does seem reasonable to make the connection that all these things could be the same body of individuals, or maybe the same individual. Something's definitely having an influence here.
Yeah, I think it probably could be, the angels plus the Amyr. I think, they seem to kind of be, they don't seem to be adversaries according to Scarpy's story. It seems like they're, on the similar wavelength. They just have two different ways of, approaching solving a problem. So it could be both of those groups kind of working in tandem with each other.
That's kind of the way I've felt about it. Like it does seem like if it all fits together in the way that it seems, that Scarpy, Chronicler, they sort of fit. that Scarpy and Chronicler kind of fit into that, where they're pulling him along, and then he has these existential forces, such as whatever influences his dream, this angel perhaps. Yeah, it's and then it seems a natural connection to make when right after we're coming into these stories of the religion, the mythology that's contained within the world, right? So that connection seems to be reasonable to make.
Yeah, and it's kind of also fucked up that in Canis, a guy dressed up basically, the devil, the Haliax, the fucking bastard of the world, is the one that saves him.
Yeah, it seems super ironic.
Well, I wonder if it's a clue.
Telu and the priests are the ones that just kind of roll by him, but in Canis is the one that stopped. And even when that girl was like, we gotta leave, he's like, no, this kid's gonna frickin' die.
That's Fitz's anti-hero. That would fit in if Canis is the one saving him. Then who's helping Kvothe is helping him to destroy the world. He's the anti-hero.
I mean,
or we have it could be some symbolism that Haliax is not as bad as we fucking think. That maybe Haliax there's more gray to Haliax than meets the eye.
The more we've talked about Haliax's formation, he does seem to be more humanized. I look at him completely differently than I did before we started to talk about it.
Well, didn't we? Isn't one of Scarpy's stories? Isn't Haliax isn't Lanray who becomes Haliax? Isn't Lanray like a great hero?
Yes.
Yeah, he is.
Yes.
Which would coincide with the way Kvothe is right now, or at some point at least has the possibility, and in the reader's mind, Kvothe is going to be this great hero. And then at some point, before he becomes Kvothe at the end, something has changed, and everyone looks at him as this terrible villain.
That's what that's what I like so much about the writing is you can view it from both ways. You can view it from a variety of different ways, obviously, but the idea of the anti-hero is not to be overlooked. It's a possibility, and that's great. It's if it was clear one way or the other, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting to talk about. There wouldn't be much to speculate on, right? But it's the fact that we're left trying to make these connections and figure out, what role is he ultimately playing and which way is he going in or being pulled into.
Well, the fact that when chroniclers first trying to get him to tell a story is like some say there's a new Chandrian, that in Kvothe's like, well, the ones that know better. It leads you to believe that there's something fishy with him, where there's a reason why people would view him as a new Chandrian. There's something fucked up that happened that could blur the lines on, whether he's a good guy or fucking went bad. At least it could be interpreted that I think outside people could interpret what he did to be a villain move. But I think there's probably, more gray to it, that he did something bad, but he didn't do it for bad reasons.
And it could be that just like Lanray, he does it for love.
Yeah, it could be.
So,
I think I think he's given a very hard decision to make. He makes the decision. He has to live with it. There's repercussions that he did not intend or he accepted because he had to. He's bearing the weight of that burden. That's why he's Kvothe. That's part of the reason why he's Kvothe. He had to do a lot of things, make a lot of sacrifices, it seems.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, and then so she's like, I dreamed about the big pot Jimmy showed me before those folks were killed up in Malton Farm. I love the kilt.
By the way, but before that, she says she slept like a babe at the tit. There's a lot of boob talk in these last few tags. This is boobs after boobs after boobs. It's all because of Elodin. I'm telling you, man, that's how much power he has in this world. Yeah.
Elodin mentions grabbing tits, and then everybody's got tit on their mind. He's got
even
Rothfuss powers. Yeah.
Rothfuss has it. Now we all do. It's not a bad thing. I mean, they're kind of on my mind anyway. So.
You fucking dirtbag.
Why is that a dirtbag thing? I'm human being.
Grow up, dude. Grow up. But he's like, you remembered something about the pot with the 7 people painted on it? I asked excitedly. She hesitated for a moment, frowning. There was 8 of them, she said, not 7. 8? I asked. Are you sure? She nodded earnestly. I thought I told you before. The rising hope in my chest suddenly fell into the pit of my stomach, where it lay heavy and sour. There were 7 Chandrian. It was one of the few things I knew for certain about them. If there were 8 people on the painted vase Nina had seen, ... But yeah, and then she's like, I dreamed about the pot for 3 nights in a row, and it weren't a bad dream at all. I woke up all rested and happy every night. I knew then that God was telling me to do something. And I think that she's probably interpreting that correctly. I think we've seen, it seems like someone went into Kvothe's dreams to implant knowledge into his mind as far as, what plants he needed to survive, what he needed to do to survive there, but also the ring of Greystones, the sailor's knot with Ben, like things that he'd never learned before. Like it seems like there's a power in this world where people can implant dreams into your mind. And I think that is what was happening to Nina, is she got the same dream 3 nights in a row where she saw this portion of the pot. I think it was important that it was there. And I think that someone was leading her to give this to Kvothe.
I agree, and we also have that with Bella with her dream, right? So
yeah,
with these dreams, it brings up a lot of questions. Who Who's implanting these dreams? Are these angels? Are these
the only other example we have of in story where it specifically mentions someone coming into a dream is Telu coming into Periel Poontang's dream before he impregnates himself into her. He comes into her dream and she's like, "Did you come here to help, so and so?" And he's like, "No, those are dirtbags."
Her neighbor. Yeah.
Yeah, and she, through her like chastising him, like, "You just don't understand what it is to be a human."
I guess
I
didn't
realize
I
will
was in
now.
Dream.
Yeah, that was in her dream.
So that's
then she woke up and she's pregnant. So that's in story. We have angels going into someone's dreams and doing shit, and so that's what makes me think it's likely angels.
So since Fitz isn't here, I'll say it. So Nina's Telu.
Yes. And Kvothe is Telu.
Don't do that. Don't say yes to that. You're going to confuse and infuriate people.
No, Nina is Telu and Kvothe is Telu and everybody else is Telu. Everybody is Telu, and it's a very schizophrenic story. And that's just what it is.
We're going back to that. So it's just a dude sitting in a room by himself, wiping bottles, and going, "I'm Telu, we're all Telu, you're Telu," and then he just tells stories in his mind.
Bast is just some janitor, like trying to cheer up the schizophrenic. So he's like, that's what the story is all about.
So but does Chronicler
and Chronicler
exist?
is the psychiatrist? Yeah.
Okay, so he does it. Oh, he's the doctor. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Bast
so
is
just
janitor.
a mental patient.
Chronicler is the psychiatrist. Yeah, and then and old Cobb is the just wise, funny nurse.
Yeah, that's what he is.
Yeah,
the wise.
Lots of great stories. Lots of great stories. Very colorful life this nurse has lived.
Well, but that is the big question, right? I mean, or one of the big questions is why one side? Well, I guess one side, you could say she only saw that side of the pot, so there is that.
It's clearly
that's not true.
It's clear that this is the important
for
information that needs to be delivered to him. I mean, why else would only one side be delivered?
And in particular, 3 nights in a row. And what's so significant to me, and why it seems like it's angels, there's a lot of significance in these chapters, or this story, but that she dreams about it for 3 nights in a row, and they're not bad dreams. She wakes up rested and feeling and happy. That's why she's like, well, God's telling me to do something positive with this information. Rather than feeling like, oh, I'm being haunted, which would be a rational feeling, but to wake up from a dream.
I mean, it also could be like, it could be that the Chandrian are manipulating her, or someone's manipulating her.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't get that feel. I don't get that feel that that's what's going on. But I mean, it could be that too. But whoever's trying to get her to give this information is also trying to, calm her, put her mind at ease.
But what's so interesting about that, as far as I see it, is I see the Amyr as being more the good guys, but the way she sees them when she draws them, the way she describes it, is like they were awful. Oh, they were the worst. They were so awful to look at.
Yeah, and I would see, like, when I look at that and I look at who she is, I could see that, like, someone who is just willing to do some dirty shit for the greater good, like the fucking psycho doctor. I'm drawing a blank on his name. That's gonna come up when Gilgamesh, whatever his name is.
I just forget his name. Yeah, I know.
I'm drawing a blank on it, but
Mayor's doctor, poison.
Yeah, but that guy, he was doing some dirty shit, but he advanced the world in a significant way. Like, he killed a lot of people and he experimented on a lot of people, but he saved way more lives than he killed. It's fucked up. It's a fucked up moral philosophy. And so, like, I don't look at the Amyr as, like, just, like, good guys. clearly they're willing to do some fucking super dirty shit. So I see them distinctly different than the angels.
That's an interesting thing to tease out, is that for the greater good. Because, you could say, well, if he saves enough people, but you kill a few, is it worth their lives? You live a tortured life, or you torture somebody, yet you got all this information so you can save these lives, but some people had to die for it. It's that how many eggs to make that omelet type situation.
Yeah, and not only that, like, well, how much would that philosophy distort your mind and get you, make you willing to do some really fucked up shit? Because in your mind, like, once you cross a line, you might cross another line and another line, and you just keep going further, and you're just justifying it for the greater good. The one like kind of counterbalance in the world is like the angels are there to enact justice against these things. So that could be, that could be, why there was the downfall of the Amyr. Maybe they did go too far, and the angels fucking went and put the boot on them, and stopped them, because they're like, no, you're going too fucking far. You can say greater good all you want, but you're doing some fucking dirty shit, and that's overboard.
That's interesting. That makes a lot of sense in making sense between these three groups. The idea that because that greater good, that's interesting, because that's something I hadn't thought too much of. It's a natural progression to consider it in that way, because that is like their motto, right? And that's what their justification is for what they're doing. The fact that she sees them and is like, oh, and is shook by it, and I think it's important that it's this little girl who's innocent, who's scared, who didn't do anything. I mean, she was shown this, right? She was in a position, she was in a situation where this was thrust upon her, and when we're introduced to her, everybody feels bad for her for good reason. That's interesting. Kvothe, by the way.
Yeah, and then also another aspect of it is Ari, who seems way more in tune with the world, has a completely different outlook on the Ciri Day and the Amyr. She sees them as good. She sees them as a positive to the world. When she thinks of Kvothe as her Ciri Day, it's clearly a very positive thing. So the fact that someone who's more in tune with the world, that seems to have some kind of special power with her ability to see the proper role of things, she has a much more positive outlook than Nina. So there could also be something to the Amyr, that they are able to see what is actually good, and they are willing to do some bad things, but they are doing it for the greater good. So he leaves so much up in the air with the Chandrian and the Amyr, where I don't think there's going to be it's not going to be a black and white story. I think they're going to both have reasons for why they do the things they do, and there's going to be some fucked up things that both of them do, but they both have justifications for it. I think I think when we get to the end, I think the Amyr and the Chandrian are going to be much closer, much more similar than they are apart.
Well, I was going to say, what if the Chandrian is not what they initially appear to be, which is kind of what the Kvothe represents, right? They're not just destruction. I think that's what you're saying, right? Is they're not just outright destruction.
I think they are destruction, but I think they have a reason for it.
But that's what I mean. I'm saying they're not just outright. It seems like the Kvothe is.
I don't think they're just evil. I don't think they're evil. I think they do evil things, but I think they are, in their mind, I think they probably are thinking they're doing it for the greater good. Although, I should say Haliax is probably thinking of himself as doing, he probably thinks of himself as an Amyr, as doing for the greater good. And
I think Cinder's a tool.
He's aligned himself with some fucking scumbags. Because there's just no way to paint Cinder as a good guy or all the other guys other than Grey Delcinti.
No, I think Grey Delcinti just does it with style. He's just, that's what it comes down to.
He's embedded himself in this, this dirtbag group. So he's like, Johnny Depp in 21 Jump Street. So, I mean, he's like playing a role.
I don't know the reference. I mean, I know Johnny Depp's in 21 Jump Street. I've never seen a single episode. I don't know how that reference fits.
Well, your life has been terrible. I mean, it's unfortunate.
Really? I'm missing that much from 21 Jump Street.
Yep. Terrible life. It's unfortunate. So. I feel bad for you. I feel bad for your life and your existence. So I pity you.
I pity you. I have a feeling that if I go back, try to watch it, it's going to be hard. It would be difficult. I think no,
you just don't get it.
Well, I don't. I haven't seen it.
But
I don't get your allegiance to it. I've
never
never heard you talk about it before. So there's also that.
Old Grey's, working underground. He's like, I can't think of like
another example.
Fucking 30s movie, black and white movie where someone is, playing, both sides.
It's Spy. You can't think of a Spy. I mean, it sounds like it's some sort of
I don't know,
a double agent type scenario.
Is like the what was it, Christmas Story, or what's that stupid movie you're obsessed with? I can't think.
It's a Wonderful Life.
Like someone who's like pretends to be a bad guy but's actually a good guy. Is there a person like that in A Wonderful Life? Like, think of that. Like one of your stupid movies you like that someone pretends to be a bad guy but's a good guy. It's like that.
Okay. All right. Well, that was helpful.
Yeah.
I did have questions, and maybe they're already clear, but the candles and the moon, the signifiers that. Well, and I might be skipping past something you wanted to point out, but those I have
let's
questions
like
about those.
read the
okay.
Read the parts. Like, so first it's Cinder. And so I slowly unrolled the piece of paper and instantly recognized the man she had painted. His eyes were pure black. In the background, there was a bare tree, and he was standing on a circle of blue with a few wavy lines on it. So first thing I'll mention is we go in a bonus episode. If you haven't watched it, it's not on the podcast on iTunes or Spotify or anything. Is just on YouTube. If you go to our bonus episode section on YouTube, it's the first bonus episode where we talked to Rich, who had theories about that the signs that the Chandrian have, like Cinder and Haliax, all their different signs, they're curses, and their curses are tied to how they betrayed their cities. So go watch that. But
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, but so his eyes are pure black. In the background, there was a bare tree, and he was standing on a circle of blue with a few wavy lines on it. It's tough to figure out exactly what that is. I think Rich in the bonus episode has a solid guess, but it's very hard to figure out.
The bear tree is not a bear. It's a bear with no leaves.
No, that doesn't sound right.
Just to help clarify, just for the listeners, since they're not looking at the page the way I see it on the page, and this could be a typo.
Yeah, it's good to point that out because a lot of people are fixated on bear trees and.
Do bears grow out of trees? I mean, I know they can climb trees.
I think it's trees shaped like bears. I mean, that's just
trees,
a thing. That's a thing.
Bear-shaped tree?
Okay. Yeah, that's a thing. Bear-shaped trees, that's a thing.
Tree-shaped bears?
Yeah. Yeah, both. Yeah, they're both things. But
they're both things.
It's tough to understand what the bear tree means and the wavy lines.
Like, well, she does say that he's supposed to be standing on water, and there's drifts of snow around him. His hair was white.
They're obvious clues, but I think it's one of those clues that you have to have the third book to figure them out. Like once you read the third book, it's going to be clear why he's standing on water and there's a bare tree. But it's tough to figure out just off of that.
There are certain parts there's many parts within the books that they hint at, and there could be connections that we're not making, but there are certain things where it's like, well, this probably is coming in book 3, and this is going to connect, like a lot of stuff in book 2 connect to book 1, and you don't know it until you get to book 2, right? So there's going to be a lot of that. There's going to be points of that. There are certain things that are hinting at it. I like the theories, about their, their, what some people see as their powers is more as their curses, and those curses are because of the cities they betrayed, which is interesting. The standing on water and, with snow about, I don't know. It's not something I have answers to.
Yeah, most of these things I don't have answers to. They're clearly clues. They're clearly important, but when you go through both books, there's not a lot of evidence. It's just a lot of speculation. I like a lot of the ideas that Triple Dong Rich had and the bonus episode, but I don't. It's just purely guessing. But yeah, and then so the other one, he's like, I unrolled the paper further. There was a second man, or rather the shape of a man, in a great hooded robe. Inside the cowl of the robe was nothing but blackness. Over his head were 3 moons, a full moon, a half moon, and one that was just a crescent. Next to him were 2 candles. One was yellow with a bright orange flame. The other candle sat underneath his outstretched hand. It was gray with a black flame, and the space around it was smudged and darkened. That's supposed to be shadow, I think, Nina said, pointing to the area under his hand. It was more obvious on the pot. I had to use charcoal for that. I couldn't get it right with paint. This was obviously Haliax, the leader of the Chandrian. When I'd seen him surrounded unnatural shadows, the fire around him had been strangely dimmed, and the cowl of his cloak had been black as the bottom of a well.
So a couple things. With the moons, is this signifying time? I mean, is that the signifying aspect of what we're getting with the 3 moons? In terms of access?
Yeah, I mean, you could think of it. Could it be time? Could it be tying him to Haliax? I mean, to Iax. His name is Breath of Iax. Haliax, Hal in Latin means breath, so his name is literally Breath of Iax. Mm-hmm. So could the moon, because if Iax steals the moon, could the moons be signifying that Lanre was turned into Haliax by Iax, and Iax is controlling him in some manner? Or did they make a deal? Like, if Haliax gets Iax lit loose, then Iax will kill Haliax and end his suffering. That's actually what I think Haliax is. If I had to put money on it, my guess is that Haliax went behind the doors of stone, like when they talk about no door can bar his passing. I think the Kvothe gave Haliax the information he needed to be able to go behind any door, and he went behind the door and he talked to Iax, and he made a deal with Iax that I will find someone who will let you out, and then when I get you out, you have to kill me. Mm. And I think that because I think it's clear Haliax wants to end his life. And so I think it would make sense that, I don't know if that's right. I mean, that's super speculative, and it's not a theory that I'm very confident in. It's just when I try to piece together where Haliax and Iax could have came together. That's the best I can come up with, is that they made a deal that Iax will kill Haliax and put him out of his misery.
Well, I was going to say, when you say also came together, we get a lot of hints at the significance of the Fae and Faerinial, however you say it. So yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what I brought up with in terms of the access with the 3 moons. I mean, I guess, yeah, that does also make sense that it hints at Iax's relationship here and his significance, as well as it's kind of ruling over, right? It's kind of this onerous. It seems to signify that to me because it's at the top. Which is also where the moon is, obviously, but it hints at that, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I mean, it could tie into the Lackless poems, like we talked about in episode 4, where, you know, a time that must be right. It could be signifying that there is a specific time, a specific phase of the moon that needs to be right. It's tough to say. It's just it's clearly a clue. It's just there's nothing else in the books that I've come across that clearly explains what the clue means. It's clearly a clue that we haven't been given the information that would spell it out for us yet. But it's a clue, and the flame and the shadow flame.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they again, I could see where that has something to do with the Lackless poems, where they talk about the candles, and so. Stuff to say, though. It's very speculative. I mean, obviously, these are massive clues that are extremely important to figuring out what's going to happen in book 3. It's just Rothfuss didn't give us the information to figure it out.
Yeah, so yellow with a bright orange flame. The other is underneath his outstretched hand, gray with a black flame. And then the space around it is smudged and darkened. Yeah, I don't know. It's great imagery. It's very mysterious. There's a lot of mystery wrapped up in it, in giving us, you know, information that's iconic to the story. I mean, it's rich with imagery. It's just, yeah, we don't have the pieces all fit. We're getting a lot of images that hint at many different things, and it's just hard to.
Yeah, I mean, there's just there's just not enough information to pin it down and to like give like, okay, it's not like, you know, Natalia Lackless. I mean, that's a pretty clear theory, even though for whatever reason I keep seeing people like no, that's not what it is. It's not Natalia Lackless. Kvothe's actually the son of the moon. But like there are some clues in the story where it's very clear, and this is a clear clue. It's just there's not enough substance around it to be able to figure out what it means. But it's in your face that these are major fucking clues. These are not minor clues. These are major clues. The fact that there's there's a third figure larger than the other two. He wore armor and an open-faced helmet. On his chest was a bright insignia that looked like an autumn leaf, red on the outside, brightening to orange near the middle with a straight black stem. The skin of his face was tanned, but the hand he held poised upright was bright red. The other hand was hidden behind a large round object that Nina had somehow managed to color metallic bronze. I guess it was a shield. He's the worst, Nina said, her voice subdued. And then, you know, Kvothe's like, you know, you shouldn't say that. You've done a wonderful job. Nina gave his faint smile. That's not what I meant, she said. He was hard to do. I got the copper pretty okay here. She touched his shield, but this red, her finger brushed his upraised hand, is supposed to be blood. He's got blood all over his hand. She tapped his chest, and this was brighter, like something burning. I recognized him then. It wasn't a leaf on his chest. It was a tower wrapped in flame. His bloody outstretched hand wasn't demonstrating something. It was making a gesture of rebuke towards Haliax and the rest. He was holding up his hand to stop them. This man was one of the Amyr, one of the Siridae. I think the tower in flame is probably Meritorial. I think that's the most likely because of, Haliax being the one who founds the the Amyr. I think mere Terrennial burning would make the most sense as being on their shield. The bloody hand and all that kind of stuff. Like, I'm real curious what the backstory is on the Amyr, because I think once we understand the backstory of the Amyr, it's going to be less cut and dry. Where it seems on the surface they're the good guys, Chandrian are the bad guys. I think there's going to be some semblance of the stories that makes the Amyr worse and the Chandrian better without, completely flipping them.
I get that impression. I mean, I definitely get the impression that the Amyr, it's not so clear cut, especially with the Amyr. It's a bit harder to see with the Chandrian, I feel like, but it does, just considering that that Haliax checks Cinder for what he's doing, that the idea that the others within the group are cursed rather than just running roughshod over all these areas, just to kill people, but having some sort of purpose behind it. Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be more gray there, which is more interesting for the story to begin with, man. I mean, if it was just clear cut, good and bad, then there's not a whole lot of nuance. I think Rothfuss deserves a lot more credit with what he's created here, and I like it. I like the idea that what you brought up there with like Caudicus and the greater good, and what the moral question that brings up is, where's the line?
Yeah.
And, what are you willing to do? And
good to who?
It's an age-old, exactly. And it's an age-old question of, well, then who wields the power, and who's being the one, oppressed over. Yeah, it definitely goes a lot further than just good and bad.
And that's why I think of the angels as, the watchers, because, it comes down to when you talk about like for the greater good, like the first question that pops in most people's mind is, like who determines what's good? Who watches, these people? And so the angels in Scarpy's story seem like the person that would be, watching over the Chandrian and the Amyr and, preventing them from crossing, lines that you just can't cross. Because they're obviously extremely fucking powerful. They could cause some major fucking damage.
Well, and it makes sense too that what we have with Cinder, where he's like, "Oh, you're just as good as a watcher," which he holds them in contempt because that's not his purpose. He's one of action, even though So why would he hold them in contempt? Well, if they had power over him, that would be the reason, right? I mean, I think that would be a very good reason, at least.
Yeah, and you'd see them as more of an annoyance than like an actual like enemy, because they're not really like trying to force things to go one way or another, but they are involved. They are trying to prevent you from going too far. They're in your way, but they're not actively like trying to hunt you down and kill you. So
yeah, it's the judgment, right? It's weighing that judgment. That's it's a frustrating position to be put in if you're in a place like that. If you're in one of those positions, because you're playing your game, the other people are playing their game, and at least when you're playing against the competitor, that that's why everybody hates the ref, right? Because he's the one in the way as you try to get over on the competition. At least with the competition, you know what their directive is.
Yeah,
and you're working against them rather than being judicated against, as the angels would represent. Which is also, I mean, and that so the angels have their influence through, let's say, Kvothe saving him when he's about to die of hypothermia, or Nina with the pot, and Kvothe with his dreams and surviving in the woods, or Fella with getting the suggestion of what the doors of stones are, and Phasia and all that. Yeah, and who knows with Ari, man? There seems to be a lot banging around that head of hers. There seems to be a lot in her past experience. There seems to be a lot that I would imagine she has access to that we fucking such a great, interesting character that I haven't thought about in a while because we haven't dealt with her in a couple chapters here. But there's so much that's possible within her, right? Because of just the enigma that she is. Yeah, that makes me want book 3 a lot more.
Yeah,
because I know we're gonna have a whole bunch of chapters here with no Ari.
And this chapter specifically makes you want 3 because you see how big of clues they are, and they're just they're impossible to perfectly predict. I mean, maybe someone's fucking Rain-Maned it out, but I have not seen a guess where I'm like, yeah, that's 100%. That's definitely what it is.
The suggestion of again, I like it so much that the Ciridae's face is terribly grim. He looks angry. He looks like he's ready to burn down the whole world. The fact that she says it in the way that she says it, man, it's powerful, and it completely changes. Because I've read these books before, but I haven't read them as closely as we're reading now, and it completely changes the way. And I've slowly gotten there where I'm looking at the Amyr a little bit differently, but this does definitely solidify or sort of puts together some of those ideas that there's a lot more dirt to them.
Yeah, and we get some more information when she talks about the parts that she's seen but she didn't paint, and she's like, not like this. I remember there was a woman with no clothes on and a broken sword and a fire. Those are clearly Chandrian signs. Like Uznea lives in nothing but decay. Sturkis is in thrall of iron, and the other guy with the fire, I can't remember. It doesn't matter, but
on the top of my head. But didn't she go as far as even saying she thought an angel was helping her?
Well, she felt God was putting these dreams into her mind. And then she's like, I think an angel helped me remember this piece in a dream. So I put paint, so I could paint it down and bring it to you. And then he asked where she got the parchment, and she took it from the Book of the Path. And when she was she could like take a knife against the ink and scratch it off. But she left all the names of like Telu and the angels. And when she did that, the names of like Ordale and Andin, 2 of the angels, were over top of the Amyr's shoulders, like kind of weighing it down almost. And so that's also another indication that the angels are there to like keep these people in line,
keep them at bay,
that they are watchers.
It's a really cool image when you picture what she's created, but then still having the parchment, on the paper, the original writing from the Bible, basically, still having those words sort of peppered throughout. It's pretty cool to sort of picture that, the imagery of it.
It's hard to, given, what we know about the Amyr and the greater good, and then to a clear picture of one of the Amyr, the Ciridae, above reproach, but above his shoulder is 2 angels that Kvothe sees. They're like weighing him down. It's hard to get that kind of imagery from Rothfuss and not think that the Amyr are kind of like a Punisher, and then you have the angels who are just kind of like trying to keep the fucking Punisher in line. Like trying to keep them from going, full bad and just crossing lines that they can't come back from.
Kind of like Haliax with the Chandrian.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, that's really interesting, man. So they kind of are pitted against one another. They're almost like mirror images. And again, it does also...
That's even, that fits with Cinder going, you're no better than a watcher. Like, because Haliax is weighing them down, like maybe the angels are weighing down the Amyr.
And then again, it also forces or suggests that question of, I mean, you could just flip it. I know this is what Fitz would love to do, is like, maybe they're the bad guys, maybe these guys are the bad guys. And yeah, that question kind of comes up. especially here though, that really gets suggested, by her reaction and how she sees. It's more upsetting to her, the image with the Amyr, than it is with the Chandrian, or in particular with I know she doesn't have access to the whole pot, but with Cinder at least.
Well, I mean, you could think about it like with the Punisher. Like if you're a little girl and you saw the Punisher come in and just wipe out a bunch of bad guys, like it'd be scary as fuck.
Yes, it would.
Like, I mean, you especially if you don't know the context about why he's doing what he's doing or who he's killing, you just see some dude just going in, just massacring a bunch of people. Like, it'd be fucking scary. So.
Yeah,
it makes sense to paint the Amyr as scary because they are willing to cross lines that, they're clearly anti-heroes at best.
I was going to say, man, I mean, it's all about context, right? I mean, if you just show Ned Stark chopping off some guy's head, and there's no music suggesting he's a good guy or no backstory, it's like, this guy's kind of fucking vicious.
Yeah.
Like, what's this guy's deal? He seems like the bad guy.
Yeah. I mean, context is important. If you haven't learned that in your life, that's something you pick up from this show is context is important.
Yeah, please.
Write that down. Write that down. Stop, pause the podcast and write down context is important. Just learned a lot.
Please do.
Just drop some dimes.
If you pick nothing else up, if you haven't yet at this point in your life, please, I beg you, the rest of the world will benefit.
Hold on.
If you haven't picked up
anything from this podcast, like go start over. Like I'm just dropping dime after dime after dime after dime. Like fucking Chris Paul of podcasts.
Chris Paul of podcasts. Okay, well, he didn't win a NBA Finals, but
fine. I'm the Magic Johnson of podcasts. You happy? Is that better?
I like the little the little nuance and context and world building here, where Nina suddenly is panicked. Oh no, I should have been back at the docks by now. My mom's going to give me a birching. And the fact that Kvothe even goes as far as like laughing about it, that he's just utterly amazed by she's willing to defy
the Chandrian, but still terrified of making her mother angry. Such is the way of the world.
Yeah.
Again, that's a good line.
That's great.
And then I also liked it's a little throwaway line when he tells her, if you have any other dreams or have anything else, I play music at Anchors. And she's like, is it magic music? I laughed again. Some people think so. Yeah, me. I think so.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's again, I think there's a lot of wisdom in this innocent little girl that's being, at least she's being used in that way by Rothfuss here and giving a lot of hints to things that we should be picking up on. And I think there is definitely much more to his music.
This is a pivotal point for him, too, because when he's like, my mind spun with what I just learned, I thought of what I heard Haliax say to Cinder all those years ago. Who keeps you safe from the Amyr, the singers, and the scythe? And then he's like, but everyone knew about the Amyr. They were the bright knights of the Aetern Empire. They were the strong hand of the church for 200 years. They were the subject of 100 stories and songs. I knew my history. The Amyr had been founded by the Talon Church in the early days of the Aetern Empire, but the pottery Nina had seen had been much older than that. I knew my history. The Amyr had been condemned and disbanded by the church before the empire fell, but I knew the Chandrian were still afraid of them today. It seemed like there was more to the story.
Yeah, and that's what we're getting here, right? This is what's being suggested. And I think that's obviously the biggest takeaway from
almost everything we've been talking about is like there's got to be more, even with us having more pieces of the puzzle than Kvothe has. We've been able to piece more together than he has, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
but even having all that extra information, I think, we've been talking about all this entire chapter is like, it seems like there's more going on with the Amyr. They're not just all good. They're not all bad. There's something, anti-heroic about them. And it seems like the angels are watching over them and the Chandrian, or at least them, and like trying to keep them in line. Angels maybe are putting dreams in Nina's head and Kvothe's head and Fella's head. Like there's clearly more going on that we have some clues at, and we kind of get a little bit of a feel of what might be going on, but we just have loose guesses. And Kvothe is very much in those shoes. I love the fact that Kvothe ends this chapter in the same shoes as us.
Yeah.
And even with all the information we got, we still end this chapter with like just guesses.
Well, and clearly that this is also suggested with the fact that the information about the Amyr is also being pruned. They're not able to find. Well, I guess we find that out later, or I don't think we've faced it yet.
Yeah, especially with the mayor.
That. Yeah. We know that people have tried; they can't find it. What's Lauren up to? Like, what are these guys up to? If it's all good, if everything they're doing is noble, then why be in hiding?
Yeah.
The one other thing in the chapter that struck me as kind of funny is when he reacts, "You cut this out of the Book of the Path?" I asked, somewhat aghast. I'm not particularly religious, but I do have a vestigial sense of propriety. After so many hours in the archives, the thought of cutting pages out of a book was horrifying to me. I just thought it was kind of funny, Kvothe clutching his pearls like that.
Yeah.
Like,
after
my goodness.
After the vapors. But yeah, and so he goes, I saw only one bowman. Unfortunately, he kept his wits about him, and as soon as my face appeared over the top of the ridge, he drew and let fly in a smooth motion. A gust of wind saved me. And that's noteworthy, too, because this is not the first time that a gust of wind has saved him.
Yeah. Well, and it sounded like, not only did it save him, it was coming at his face. Like he was, it was almost like a kill shot.
Yeah, it would have. Literally saved him. Saved his life. And because he just poked his head over. That's the only thing exposed. And so a gust of wind saved him, similar to like the gust of wind, saved him on the roof of Ambrose's place. And then also screwed him over too, though. But yeah, I pushed myself back down out of sight and stabbed the sentry's body over and over in a delirious rage. Jeez. Finally, I struck a buckle and the blade snapped. Panting, I dropped the broken knife. I came back to my senses with the sound of Martin's forlorn praying in my ears. My limbs felt cold as lead, heavy and awkward. Worse than that, I could feel the numb sluggishness of hypothermia creeping through me. So he's in bad shape.
That was pretty significant, though, the Ramston steel blade breaking.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Snapping. It did a lot of work, right? Did a lot of work, but all he did was hit a buckle, and it snaps. So it is pretty... When it comes down to it, yes, it's sharp, and it keeps its edge, but, you hit a buckle. That's all it took to snap the thing.
Yeah, after you were, like, sawing through logs and shit with a knife.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so it breaks, and then he's like, lightning etched the sky again. I had an idea. I laughed a terrible laugh, but the leader was barking new orders, and I didn't doubt new bows would be found or strings replaced. Worse, they might simply abandon their shelter and overrun us with sheer numbers. There was easily a dozen men still standing, and Martin still lay praying on the bank. Telu, who the fire could not kill, watch over me in fire. I kicked at him. Get up here, damn you, or we'll all be dead. And he's like, I shook him hard and thrust a bow at him with my other hand, not knowing how it'd come to be there. Lightning flashed again, showed me what he saw. My hands and arms were covered with the sentry's blood, so it kind of looks like a Siri day.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of
that's funny
imagery in the books that make Kvothe look like a Siri day. Ari calls him her Siri day because of the way he looked when he was all bloody.
Man, you really do got to be careful with it. Like, I've read this a number of times, and I should make that connection. But all I'm making in this moment is like, man, he looks like a crazy fucking killer.
Yeah.
Because he's covered in blood and rain, so it's going to be like splotchy, which is even more creepy in a way.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, but yeah,
but there's a lot of imagery that relates Kvothe to the Amyr and specifically to the Siri Day. But yeah, and then so he tells Martin to shoot the tree, and Martin, I like the way it kind of resolves, where it's like he's praying as he's like pulling his bow out and getting his string and getting the arrow ready. He's like, Telu, who held Incanus to the wheel, watch over me in darkness. I turned my attention back to the camp. Their leader had brought them under control. I could see his mouth shouting orders, but all I could hear was the sound of Martin's trembling voice. Telu, whose eyes are true, watch over me. Suddenly the leader paused and cocked his head. He held himself perfectly still, as if listening to something. Martin continued praying. Telu, son of yourself, watch over me. Their leader looked quickly to the left and right, and as if he had heard something that disturbed him. He cocked his head again. He can hear you, I shouted madly at Martin. Shoot, he's getting them ready to do something. Martin took aim at the tree in the center of the camp. Wind buffeted him as he continued to pray. Telu, who was Minda, who you were, watch over me in Minda's name, Imperial's name, in Ordal's name, in Andon's name, watch over me. And it says their leader turned his head as if to search the sky for something. Something about the motion seemed terribly familiar, but my thoughts were growing muddy as Binder's chills tightened their grip. The bandit leader turned and bounded for the tent, disappearing inside. Shoot the tree, I screamed. That, I think, is Cinder looking up like they all looked up when they heard something.
Yeah.
And they're like, they come.
Yeah, they're
and
being
I think
signaled.
The angels showed up.
Yeah, it seemed. Yeah, it speaks to that. It gets very familiar with. It seems like he's warned. Either he's warned or he's beckoned. Like it seemed like they were beckoned before, and it was like we're out. Like he got paged. He got beeped. Right?
And they're in their greatest need, and like Telu will come in your greatest need. Like this is their greatest need. When Kvothe was about to be killed by Cinder, they showed up. When Kvothe was dying in Tarbean, the image of the angel showed up and then sent Incanus to save him. And then here, when he's dying of Binder's chills and he's out of commission at this point, pretty much. He's got one last gasp, but outside of that, he's done. He's not going to be able to continue to kill the rest of these 12 guys. So if he just passes out here and doesn't kill them, then they just come up and slaughter the rest of the group. So and 3 times he was about to be killed or die, it seems like the angels show up and save his life.
Yeah, it's an interesting combination, because another way to see it is Cinder's warned. You know what I mean? And like there's like, I've talked about that fatefulness before, almost like they know what's happening. They know what's about to happen, and someone from, not necessarily the future, but I guess to a degree, someone who knows, the Kvothe-ish, someone that knows the future, knows what things lead to, warn Cinder, get the fuck out of there. I don't know. It's
well, it's the fact that when they look up in the sky and they go, they come.
Yeah.
They're looking for someone coming. They sense someone's coming, and they looked up in the sky for them. So I don't think that is like they heard a warning. I think that is they sensed the people that were coming. They sensed them.
So those who can save Kvothe and intervene are also the ones that, the singers, the scythe, those are the ones that the Cinder and his group need to be afraid of as well, right?
Yeah, except for I think, when like Cinder is like, you're no better than a watcher. Yeah. I think this is who they're referring to. I think he's when he says the watchers, I think he's probably referring to angels. And I think that's who saved Kvothe's life then. I think that's who saved his life in Tarbean. And I think that's who saved his life here.
So being a watcher can still be pretty effective then.
Yeah, I think Telu has saved him. And we know that Kvothe has a run-in, at least with someone who could be considered an angel. Because it says, I had to trick a demon to get my heart's desire, and, I had to fight an angel to keep it. This is the face of a man who's killed an angel. So it could be the case that the angels have been interfering in his life, saving him for some time, and that he's going to have a run-in with an angel. I think there's got to be some meetings with an angel, an Amyr, Chandrian. There's got to be some kind of meetings in that. And I think those three events are the clearest tie-ins for angels, I think.
Well, I mean, there's definitely some great suggestion here with the moment that Martin is saying Ordal Andon, and then later looks up. I mean,
it's just like, who the fuck? If that's not the angels, then why the fuck did he write it in a way that is like, angels, Telu, please save me. Angels, come to my rescue. And then someone comes to the rescue, and it's not the angels. When everything about it like would give you the impression, like the way the angels are described is like they don't, you can't see them except for, unless you have great power or you're in great peril. And so like that's who this would be. Like the Amyr and the Chandrian are like people you can see. The angels are the ones that are described as like these invisible fucking beings.
Well, I thought Fitz settled that you can see angels.
Yeah, we did.
No, but back on that episode though, actually, or that section of the books, I'm trying to remember the fucking party game, the Christmas on crack fucking, or Christmas fucking I steal your shit game.
Yeah, winter's pageantry or whatever.
Was that in Canis, and who was the other dressed up as the woman that was with?
In Canis, and just like a demon or something like that. I can't remember. I don't think she was like a specific character.
I thought one was actually like represented an angel.
No,
like
no.
Right.
The angels were the ones that were chased in Canis away.
It was
Telu.
Okay.
Telu.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. All right. Yeah, I was trying to remember how that. Okay. Yeah, so a bunch of them dress up as like Incanis and demons, and then it's Telu that comes around and can save them.
Yeah, and it's the fact that Incanis saved him and Telu chased Incanis away is a reason a lot of people think that, like, the Chandrian and Haliax are going to be good guys, and in the end, a lot of people.
Oh, that's right.
That's one of the aspects on why people think that way.
That's right, though. I forgot that the ironic twist of the woman was the one leaving. The guy's like, "No, man, this kid's like dying.
Yeah,
like we got to help him." Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So he was right. You can see angels.
Yeah. But yeah, and then so it ends phenomenally, where it's like he let the arrow fly, and I saw it wedge firmly into the trunk of a massive oak that loomed in the center of the bandits' camp. I scrabbled in the mud for one of Martin's scattered arrows and began to laugh at what I was going to attempt. It might do nothing, it might kill me, the slippage alone, but it didn't matter. I was dead already unless I found a way to get warm and dry. I would go into shock soon. Perhaps it was already there. My hands closed on the arrow. I broke my mind 6 ways and shouted my bindings as I drove it deep into the sodden ground. As above, so below, I shouted, making a joke only someone from the university could hope to understand. A second passed, the wind faded. There was a whiteness, a brightness, a noise. I was falling, then nothing. Yeah, that's fucking intense. That's an intense fucking end to the battle.
The laugh here and the terrible laugh earlier, like visualizing this and hearing it and experiencing it, and all the fucking crazy imagery of what he's doing and those laughs in there. That's where it's like, again, director, actor, really important to like balance it out, because it could just look super fucking sinister, like he's a damn serial killer.
Yeah,
and he's embracing his moment to fucking hit a home run as a serial killer, basically, which is disturbing as hell. But instead, he's, I mean, it is gruesome. It's hard to that's what's so crazy about it. It is heroic, right? But it's gruesome as hell. And he's pushing the boundaries of what is possible for a human being in this crazy world, right? With the abilities that we've seen others display, and he's pushing it to this boundary of, and also in such a disturbing way. And the laughter in the middle of it too. It's wild, man.
It's not anything you would have expected for where sympathy would go, that it would lead him to do this. Would not have expected anything like this, that it would be like his greatest feat of sympathy be some barbaric, disgusting horror fucking show.
Yeah.
It's not what you would expect, but that's, what Rothfuss does.
Well, but and then if it wasn't already massively significant direct, link to like the new Taylor or the new Taberlin the Great.
Taberlin. But yeah, and it also it ends like, where it's like, and then nothing. I was following, then nothing. And it's like, and then boom, that's the end of the chapter. It's like, what the fuck happened? And I love the way it's like him kind of waking up. And it's like, I awoke, I was warm and dry. It was dark. I heard a familiar voice questioning. This is chapter 92, Taberlin the Great. Martin's voice, it was all him. He did it, questioning. I won't never say, Den. I swear to God I won't. Don't want to think of it. Get him to tell you if you want, questioning. You'd know if you'd seen. Then you wouldn't want to know no more. Don't cross him. I've seen him angry. That's all I'll say. Don't cross him, questioning. Leave off, Den. He was killing them one by one. Then he went a little crazy. No. All I'll say is this. I think he called lightning down, like God himself, like Taberlin the Great, I thought, and smiled and slept.
Yeah, man, that's one hell of a way to follow up what the hell just happened,
That is like just such a crazy climactic ending to kind of, like basically the penultimate scene for this group, the penultimate episode.
Well, and it's
like at the 60% of the way through the book, not even 2/3 of the way, and there's just this massive fucking crescendo built into it where it's like, whoa, that was fucking crazy.
Yeah. So many authors, this is where the book ends.
Yeah.
And I love, dude, and it's so great for Kvothe. He gets to wake up after this heroic moment and he gets to hear people talking about his greatness.
Yeah.
And he goes back to sleep with a smile on his face.
Yeah, right? He loves it.
He's back in the bar again, just listening to people talk about him.
Fucking scared shitless of me. They're so scared. All my friends are terrified of me. I love life.
Well, and the first 3 words, I woke, I was warm. 4 words, whatever, 5. I woke, I was warm and dry. It was dark. We know he came out. He's fine.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's...
Yeah, he survived.
Yeah. It worked. It fucking worked. And then we find out later how well it worked and how fucking insane that is.
Well, and to me, I doubt that it's him. I don't think that he did anything. I think that, maybe he contributed to it, but I think it's some other force saved him. I think that the lightning was likely a result of like Telu or some angels saved him. So I don't think what he did, like he doesn't even understand like how, like what he did would even be possible. Like he's like, maybe I wasn't even involved, and I don't think he was. I don't think he's ultimately solely responsible for saving, the group. I think that angels were likely involved in it.
Yeah, he goes as far as I don't know if I can take credit for the lightning striking when and where it did. But as far as stories go, I called the lightning and it came. And he gives those reasonings like a galvanic binding with 2 simple arrows, an attempt to ground the tree more strongly than any lightning rod. So again, man, this is fucking great shit on Rothfuss's part because it's like he does something that could work, yet you come away with like, wait, I don't know if that's really what happened. And that's why it's an interesting part of it because always in the back of your mind, first, second read for me, I still didn't have real answers. It was still like, yeah, well, so what did really like happen? It's kind of like I know I have the ideas or like the feeling of what he did, what he attempted to do, and how it works out, right? Yeah. That's what you come away with. But what actually really did happen, wasn't all him, right?
Yeah, well, you and it's a mystery. You don't know. It could be all him, but you don't know. There's enough there. Like it's like with all the other things, there's many different ways to interpret it.
Well, and the fact that he says that the way it gets delivered, it hints at, well, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Right? That's what he's doing here.
Yeah.
If he wasn't doing that, then what's he doing? He's not sloppy with some of the most important parts of the entire book. I mean, come on, man.